Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Felicia and I'm representing Walton International Group tonight. If you can just do me a favor, because the hall is really quite long, can the ladies and gentlemen at the back please move forward? I won't bite, I promise. Please? Yeah. No? Am I very scary? Well, in any case, please do, if not now, maybe a bit later, just so that I can make sure you can hear me properly, okay? Right. First of all, of course, today is a Tuesday night, and I heard that it's raining some parts of Singapore. So for being here, thank you very much for joining us. Can I just have a quick check? Who was there on last Saturday's talk on Walton? 1, 2, okay, just a handful. Most of you are hearing Walton for the first time then, I'm guessing. So let me just go through the full picture again. For those who attended last Saturday, just bear with me a little bit. Tonight, you may be wondering, this is a SIA's investment week, and as the name stands, Securities Investors Association, most of us are probably dealing with the usual instruments like equities or funds. Now, where does Walton stand in the grander scheme of things? If you look at this chart, right now we always talk about portfolio management. After the last financial crisis, upon Lehman Brothers collapsing and the whole subprime, we find that suddenly there's a need to put some of your resources in instruments that are less correlated to the market. And the two highlighted here are real estate and alternative assets. Why do we say that? Now, if you look at the usual instruments, the developed equities, fixed income, emerging market equities, no matter what, all these three charts, it represents what we call the paper product, the traditional investments. There's nothing wrong with paper products. Good times, if all the good news are coming up, you'll make a lot of money. When some bad news are coming up, probably you will lose your profit or maybe lose your capital a little bit. Now, the reason why there's a growing need to diversify into these two asset classes is because there is very little correlation. What do I mean by correlation? You and I both know, if let's say there's some huge bad news about the Eurozone debt or about the American crisis, it doesn't just impact one or two index. In fact, it will affect pretty much the whole worldwide market. Now, the important thing is to really have something where the correlation is a little bit lower that probably depend more on the job market, the population growth, and the housing growth, rather than depending on the financial market's volatility. Which is why right now the general suggested trend is that to put 30% real estate and alternative asset. Now, where does Walton fall in this big picture? In fact, we are in both real estate because we are, at the end of the day, land, a real estate product. And we also belong in the class of alternative investments, meaning investments that has low correlation to the market ups and downs. Okay? So that is where we fit into the picture. Now, the next question that I will ask is, how many of you have heard of the word land banking? I'm sure you have, yes? Quite a lot of you. Now, how many of you have heard bad news about the word land banking? Yes, more hands are coming up. Now, tonight I want to clarify once and for all, well, where does Walton stand? We may have heard a lot of news about land banking in the past. For us, what Walton does, we call it pre-development land investment. Then you may be asking, Fel, what's the difference? When you buy land and you just hope that one day it will be built, this is called land banking. When certain companies buy land in land that is not supposed to be developed, maybe it is zoned for environmental conservation. In Singapore context, it may be the MacRitchie Reservoir or even the Botanic Gardens. This land will never be developed. Trust Singapore government. Now, in this context, when a company buys land that is not supposed to be developed, but just hoping that maybe one day the government change their mind, that is land banking. Banking on that tiny chance that this land can make money. And this resulted in quite a lot of bad news in the press where all these companies that are doing land banking are getting shut down one by one. But then you may ask the next question, then how come Walton is still standing after all this bad news? Well, the simple reason is that we are in pre-development land investment. We are doing what URA is doing in Singapore. We get land at its lowest entry point. We plan the land for future growth. Afterwards, we sell to the developers, the builders, whoever will take on the next stage of the development. So instead of gambling whether this land will be developed or not, PDLI represents a certainty that this land is meant for future growth. That sets us apart, and that is exactly why, after all the bad press, Walton is still standing, and in countries like Canada, even the CPF in Canada are investing with us. In countries like Malaysia, our neighbor, where now they are tightening a lot of regulations. In fact, we are the only company that is acknowledged by the Securities Commissions. It is because we deal with PDLI. Now, then the next question that you will ask me is, so Fel, what is pre-development land investment? For that, let me bring you to here. Now, when I talk about pre-development, real estate investment as a whole, in Singapore, you're dealing with developed real estate, yes, buying and selling property. But in Singapore, what's the latest craze lately? More and more, what? Cooling measures. Who loves the cooling measures? Nobody. Why? Because it's suddenly getting harder and harder to make good returns from Singapore property, something that traditionally is a very lucrative investment, even though, yes, it does require more resources. Now, the thing about here, especially with all the cooling measures coming in, we are buying at a very high point. I remember 5 years ago, I don't even recall a Punggol real estate fetching beyond $1,000 per square foot. But now even 1,003, 1,005 is very normal in Punggol, not even talking about downtown. So here we are trying to buy high and hope to sell higher, provided there are no more cooling measures. Walton always believed in a very simple fundamental for investment, which is buy low, sell high. Where do we go in? That is the question. We come in here at the lowest entry point. And when we sell, it is always land ready for development. When you bring raw land to land ready for development, raw material to end user goods, good times, bad times, can the value go down? It is a very logical approach. If you put water mixed with Starbucks coffee powder, put in a paper cup, it's suddenly so much more than what it's usually worth. Now, there are 4 stages within this place alone. I will go through one by one just to let you see what I mean by pre-development land investment. Walton business model, we call it 4 pillars of strength. The first pillar is the guys that mitigate your risk. How do I know which land to buy? For us, we don't just do 6 months of research or 1 year of research. We do 2 to 4 years of research before buying any land to be presented to our client. For the case of our latest area launch, which is California, we waited 6 years, and we watched as the market goes lower and lower and lower, and it softly landed, and we go in. Because mitigating your risk in land investment is beyond just buying the right place. You need to buy the right place also at the right time, right? It's the same. Any property investment, you need to buy at the right place, also at the right time. The right place at the wrong time will make it the wrong investment. Now, how stringent is the selection criteria, you may ask? We researched 38 million acres of land across North America, but up to date, we only have 75,000 acres. So you see, you can imagine this funnel with all the criteria. The land that can pass through that small hole at the end of the funnel is really the best of the best, and that's what we give to the clients. Just to illustrate with a case study, we have one of our target area, Phoenix, Arizona. This is a program that we own. It's called the GIS, Geographical Information System Mapping. I'm going to now illustrate to you how we select the land, because a lot of people then ask me, Fel, isn't it cheaper to go to the US, look around, and just buy the land myself from Farmer McDonald, for example? But how do you know it is the right land? Because buying from Farmer McDonald, if it's going to end like a land banking, you don't know what to do with it afterwards. You may lose all your capital, in fact. But over here, our disciplined approach looks like this. This is Phoenix-Tucson corridor, one of the fastest growth corridor in North America. If you take out the areas that are already built out, You take out the forest and parkland, the one that we really do not want to touch. We take out the Indian reservation, conservation land, not meant for development. Federal land, state-owned land, that can only be used once all the private lands are sold out, and plus military land. And on top of that, Phoenix, Arizona is a desert, so you need a short water supply to be able to develop, right? And this is, they term it grandfather water rights. So out of the remaining land, if you see the white patches, you need to have the orange ones, the water supply. And from the growth patterns that you see, you will know that this is where the highest level activities for developable land is, and that is exactly where Walton target area is. And if we just go there and you look with naked eye, there is no way, ladies and gentlemen, you can pick the exact spot that is meant for the best returns. Now, then the selection criteria. So what are the criteria that are used to sieve out all the bad, the lousy land from the best? These are just the strategic land asset indicators. I'll make it very simple for you. We call it Jobs People Permit, JPP. Okay? When you have a very stable job market, for example, some people ask me, Fal, the US is not doing very well. Yes? Have you heard bad news about the US market? Yes? Yeah, I see people nodding. Then why do we still go there? You may ask. Now, if you look at the current situation, in fact, when the economy as a whole country is not doing very well, there are still pockets of growth that are thriving because they have strong job markets. Over there, people are very willing to move. And ladies and gentlemen, let's face it, US is so huge that each state is almost like a country on its own. For example, if I talk about Texas, the economy, if you take it as one country on its own, it will be top 20 in the world. That's how big the US is. Now, if you have very strong job market, what will it bring? People are willing to move to the places with a lot of jobs. And this is what we call the net domestic migration. They're moving from state to state, choosing one job market to affordable housing. So if let's say we're in Texas where the houses cost maybe $150,000, $200,000, in Singapore only down payment, you know. Over there, you can buy yourself a nice house with that amount of money. People are flocking more and more housing permits, and that's how we target the right places to buy. Because when there's jobs, people are moving there, they require more housing, there's a demand for your land, right? Now, how do you get in? This is where Pillar 2 comes in. This is people like me, and also we have distribution office in Germany, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and all over North America. The ownership is pretty direct in Asia, so meaning when you get into the investment, land title is under your name, you are not buying any part of Walton. This is probably one of the biggest security for your investment. And the investment still comes with title insurance, just to cover you on the full amount. The concept of ownership is called undivided interest. In Singapore term, it is similar to strata title, meaning the land that we buy are generally quite huge because it has to be enough for one whole township. So let's say we buy 1,000 acres of land, just to throw a figure. It may be syndicated to 1,000 people who own 1 acre each. It is undivided, meaning all the 1,000 people at the end of the day make exactly the same amount of money. You don't have to worry about whether I face north, south, northwest, and all that. And everyone make the same kind of returns. Okay? And the best news is that the unit price starts from 10,000 US dollars. How many times have you seen very attractive property investment, and just because you are short of that 50,000 down payment, you can't go in? Over here, the barrier of entry, we keep it very low because we want to share this profit to as many people as possible. Next, if you already get in, how to ensure that there's a buy low, sell high, you know, to make sure that this is a PDLI instead of a land banking. This is where the expertise comes in our Pillar 3. These guys are the planning team, the URA of the company. These guys will liaise with the local town planners, get all the approvals in. These guys are the ones who change the status from land that cannot be used to land ready for development. Just an example, This is a sample town planning in Buckeye, Arizona. If you look at the different colors, sometimes we put not just residential, we call it a mixed-use community. We will put a school there, we will put some amenities, the Walmart, so that you can live, you can work, and you can play within the same community. So in fact, our Walton investors, I always tell my clients, you should be very proud, because there will be certain towns that are popping up in the US, and you are a part of that process. And last but not least, after you ensure that it's it has reached its highest and best use, what do? You sell. And how do you sell? This is Singapore's favorite word, en bloc sale. So how do we create this en bloc? Now, Walton, of course, will continue to market your current land asset to the potential buyers. And 5 years later, I will be going to all these clients who park the money and say, Mr. A, 5 years ago or 7 years ago, it depends on how long the project is, you parked $10,000 with Walton. You entrusted us with this money. Now there's an offer for $20,000 for your land, yes or no? So the 1,000 people who own that particular project will then vote. As long as 60%, okay, 60%, unlike Singapore, 60% of the landowners say yes, everybody sells. Okay? So it's a clean in-out process. Who do we sell to? We have multiple exit strategies. Traditionally in the past, the one that we always focus on is the builders and developers. Because these are the guys with the big money and they need the land to create, that's like the raw material for their business. But the thing about developers, during the hot property market times, they buy and build a lot of land. But during the slow period, they tend to buy less. So we see that this causes a little bit of uncertainty in the timeline. So even though that still happens, still the returns that you see when they take over straight are not bad. This is one of the case study called Silverado. This is in Canada, Calgary. People came in the year 2000. They exited the en bloc sale. Exit is our term for en bloc sale in 2007, making 19.8% per annum. This is simple returns. Do you mind having this kind of return? Not too bad, yeah? Now we see the next case study, which is the new way of exiting. Walton got creative over the last few years. They noticed we cannot just depend on the developers having enough resources to buy our land. They created a new arm called Walton Asset Management. What they do essentially is they involve financial institutions. The one in this particular case study, one of the biggest one is Manulife. Manulife, again, is the #1 insurance company in Canada. If Manulife can come and partner with us, it does say something. Does it say something about Walton's credibility? Now, what do they do there? Over here, when it is an exit to financial institutions, they continue down the food chain. So what the institutions, things like, maybe I'll just mention some of the partners. Royal Bank of Canada, CIBC. Most of you are probably familiar with HSBC. That is the one that has the biggest presence in Singapore. Now these big guys raise money from their own clientele. They are saying, yeah, we cannot put all our clients' money in paper product as well. We need to diversify. They raise 100 million. They buy the land from Walton investors like you and me. We en bloc sale. We don't really care what happens next. Now as that housing lots in that project are being sold to the builders, the bank's clients get dividend. So they are just continuing, if I can explain, down the food chain. But the moment we get out here, we are no longer affected by the risk of the housing market. Okay? And what does this give you? If I can just show you some figures. This one, the duration of the project is between 5 to 12 years. The returns are 14 to 50. It's quite a big spectrum, % per annum. Interestingly, the 50% is not the fastest. The 50% comes from the longest. Now this highlights the risk of land investment, which is time. Sometimes a project is meant to last 5 to 8 years. What if on the 8th year is the biggest financial crisis in history? Would you rather sell it then at a low value, or would you rather wait until market recovers 2 to 3 years later and get good returns? That's a question you may want to think about. Are there projects that exit early? Yes. Are there projects that exit later? Yes. Is faster always better? No. That's the key of land investment. Sometimes, yes, exit does depend on market conditions, but at least it's just how long you wait and how much you make. Because if you look at this, even a delayed project delivers pretty solid returns. It started with a client was coming in at 23,000 per acre in the beginning. At the end of the 12 years, the offer was for 150. But of course, as we all are very impatient human beings, on the 8th year, 9th year, 10th year, what happens? We get a lot of nagging. But when the offer came at 150, it seems that everything is fine. Now, of course, this project get a lot of attention because now it's one of the most renowned community in the city of Calgary, again in Canada. This is where we built our early track record. We even went to the TV show. After all that happened, it was successfully sold. What will happen? It will go into our audited track record. It is audited by one of the big 4 accounting firm in Singapore. But of course, these are Canadian audits. And it will be stated there that the projects have exited and how much returns it's delivering. From the list of all the projects that have exited up to end 2011, the average currently is 21.59% per annum. As low as 5 to 8%, as high as 50% per annum. But the average is 21.59. The average holding period is around 7 years. So up to December 31st, 2011, the amount that we have given out is Canadian dollars 743 million. In fact, up to the end of last year, we have reached our 1 billion mark. It was a very exciting time to Walton, especially when we see the exit amounts that are coming up later. I'll just show you. This was what exited in 2008 to 2010, the worst times in financial history. If you can see the figure, it is between 10 to 22% per annum. 2011, it is between 10 to 12% per annum. 2012, it is from 7.75 to the highest 37% per annum. What about 2013? The year has just entered the second quarter. We are delivering between 11% to 17% per annum, and so far 11 offers already received for 11 projects. We are looking forward to many, many more. So just to recap why Walton then, we are the first company that entered the market of land investment. We came to Singapore 1996, and we have been here ever since. We have 80,000 clients globally. Quite a lot of them are also in Asia, and we have 75,000 acres of land. And total land holding is 3.6 billion of land asset. Now, just to illustrate to you, how big is 75,000 acres of land? Who are the biggest 2 developers in Singapore? I'm sure you know the answer. Yes? CapitaLand. Who else? Actually, it's Far East. Far East is very, very aggressive. Do you know how much land they own in Singapore? Between 1,500 to 1,800 acres. So Walton owning 75,000 acres, we are quite huge, to put it simply. Now, I'll go on to the next part that's equally as important. Why we choose certain areas where we are. I spoke about why the US. These are just some of the articles. US is recovering faster than UK and Eurozone. We are not saying that next year or even tomorrow US will be all rise and shine, everything is okay. We are not. In fact, it may take a while, but it's just that if you compare with other markets, it is recovering faster and it seems to be the better place to go for the next couple of years. Next, of course, job growth. Remember, our fundamentals are pretty much just dependent on jobs, people, permit. As long as the people are moving, whether financial market goes up and down, we are not as affected. Last but not least, US housing recovery. And this is a very recent article, just January 2013. They're saying that it's gaining steam. Is it gaining steam equally all over US? No. Some places are recovering much faster than others. And surprise, surprise, we are in those exact markets. Now I'm going to have a case study, one of our current projects in Austin, one of my favorite target area, just to let you see how we choose certain plots of land. This project is called the Cotton Meadows. Some of the names are quite funny, so you don't really have to pay much attention to the names. If you look at the accessibilities alone, I-35 is the backbone of Texas. It's an interstate highway that connects a lot of states together, north to south. In the US, a bit of trivia, the odd number highways are connecting north to south, and the even number is east to west. And there's a railway nearby. This is a part of a Walton land assembly. As you can see, we buy quite a lot of land. And this is the San Marcos Airport. San Marcos is a city pretty close to the Austin downtown. From Austin downtown, if you drive to San Marcos, it's around half an hour. In Singapore, people say half an hour, very far. In the US, it's very, very near. Now, why do we choose Texas in the first place? It is really one of the biggest economy in the US, 52 Fortune 500 companies, and it's an economy on its own, equivalent in size to Russia. So this is what I'm saying, one state equal to a country. And if you're wondering why Texas, it's number one the last 3 years for business growth. If you look at the news, strong banking, Texas economy will keep growing, job growth. Remember what I said about jobs people permit? It is all there. Now, the Austin-San Antonio corridor is one of the fastest growing corridor within the state of Texas. So even though we already know Texas is doing well, we want to focus on the exact hotspot where all the actions are. And how do we know which one? Fastest growing city in America, Austin has won this number one fastest in 3 years in a row. And is it a surprise that Dallas, one of the other area, Phoenix, San Antonio are also in the top 10? Is it really a coincidence, or is it just a result of good research? Just some of the jobs that may be familiar to you. This is very recent, March 2012. Apple is creating 3,600 jobs. And F1, Singapore loves F1, right? Singapore has really experienced the benefit of having something like F1 to the economy. It created so much boost. And this is exactly where the first F1 in the US is located, around 20 minutes away from our land. And again, they wouldn't choose this place if they don't think there's great potential to make money. And if you look at the job growth, if you look at the top few, the dark blue ones are Walton places. Again, I ask, is it a coincidence? And if you look at those jobs, during the recession, they lost quite a lot of jobs. Now, if you look at a few markets, those markets that have already recovered all the jobs from pre-recession, 4 out of 5 markets that have surpassed the previous high for job growth are in Texas. Isn't it powerful? So whilst other places are still struggling, and we are not saying that these places will even recover in the next 2 to 3 years, but it's just that some markets are doing much better than others. And when there are a lot of jobs, what did I say? People will move. And that's why you see the population increase. When the people move, what will it result in? More land area being consumed. And this is really all we are interested in. When they need more land, that's where we are. And the growth market, again, those highlighted ones you may not be able to see due to the light, but Phoenix, Tucson, Dallas, Fort Worth, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Austin, San Antonio, these are all Walton markets. Top housing transaction, lowest figure for subprime delinquency. Those who cannot pay the debt, lowest in the nation. More interestingly, new home inventory 2 to 3 months. Why is this very interesting to know? Because in 2 to 3 months, they will run out of new homes to sell. They have to start building now. And there will be a shortage because the demand is there, the supply is not catching up. And not just that, if you look at the vacant developed lot supply, just last year in 2011, it was still quite high, meaning in 42 months, then they will run out of vacant developed lots to build. But right now, the inventory has been eaten up, that now it is only down to 22 months. Now, 22 months later, they will have no more vacant developed lots to build. Meaning, now they have to start planning the land so that it will be approved land for development 22 months down the road. Guess who will be the main supplier of that approved land for development right now? Walton is the majority right now, the majority landowner in this exact region. And you can tell from the annual permits issued, there are a lot of activities in the area. And if you look at the access, in Singapore, when you want to know that you are buying the right location, what are some of the considerations? It should be near amenities, am I right? Near good schools. Parents will move house just to make sure the kids get to the right school, correct? And not just that. Normally people like to be near MRT stations or at least highway exit. Now, over here in Austin, they don't do MRT. Over there, they like to drive. So the most important infrastructure is, of course, the highway. Now, the best news is, ladies and gentlemen, I-35, again, is the backbone of the Texas as a state. Our property is here in between I-35, which is already very, very congested. They recently, in the last 2 to 3 years, built a tollway where you can pay money, similar to Singapore ERP, to avoid the jam. So if you're willing to pay money, you can get on the tollway, have an obstacle-free ride, and you save around half an hour of driving if you are driving longer distance. Now, we have direct route to both highways, both the highway and tollway. So you can imagine if you are quite near to more than one MRT station, what impact will it have on your land? Now, besides that, the surrounding activity, we mentioned about amenities, we mentioned about how close it is to things that are important. I'll flip through this very fast because you can just see from this one picture, actually, all the action. It is not an empty land out of nowhere. Just know there's someone in the audience who asked me, so Fel, does Walton invest just in small town with no action? No, this is everything that is happening in the surrounding. The retail, the usual guys, Costco, a wholesale place. Lovely, lovely, lovely place to buy things because it's very cheap. You buy in bulk. Walmart, Lowe's, home improvement. And this is the one that got me excited the most when I went to Austin last year, April. Instead of just one outlet, who has been to the US and shopped in an outlet mall before? 1, 2. Was it marvelous? Yes. The lady in front, not yes. Very good bargain, tax refund, unbelievable shopping. These two places, ladies and gentlemen, are the best shopping experience in my life so far. This is what it looks like. It was ranked by ABC Magazine as the 3rd best shopping place in the world. The best news for you, this is only 10 to 15 minutes away from our land. Will it be an attraction point if you live 10 to 15 minutes away from Orchard Road? Besides the retail, of course, we want to talk about the amenities. There's very good education, University of Texas, the top one in Texas itself. Next is Texas State University. This is very, very near to our land in San Marcos, just 11 kilometers away. 2 major hospitals, Seton Hospital and Central Texas Medical Center. A major convention center where a lot of economic activities are taking place. Employers, there are quite a lot of job market. In fact, San Marcos itself is now a growing center for biotechnology. Besides that, the existing companies are Whole Foods, Four Seasons, and some others. Residential, we are not the only ones building. There are quite a number of estates being built right now. And these estates are done by the major developers, top 10 in the US. Now, if the big guys are building nearby and they run out of land, remember the chart that I mentioned, vacant developer running out in 23 months, and they run out of land to build, where will they look? Will they look suddenly in a new market, or will they stick to what they know best and just buy the adjacent land with approved plans? These are some of the surrounding properties that are being built. 140, 160,000, 118 to 145,000, 110, and some of the bigger houses, 500,000. Affordability. Texas has loads of it. If you can move from a place where a tiny apartment costs 500,000 to a place where one big house costs you 150,000, with stable job market, with amenities all over the place, would you move? Last but not least, one thing that you need to know is, of course, the zoning status of this property, Cotton Meadows. The good news is we have had quite a bit of land projects in the past. This part here is called the Cotton Meadows, is of course in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of San Marcos, so we belong under the boundaries of the city of San Marcos. Next is, of course, we are going to incorporate this inside the existing MUD that we already have, Municipal Utility Development. So these are some permits that are already obtained by Walton Pillar 3 over there, and this is just going to be an extension of the current master plan. So we are no longer starting from scratch or zero. We are going to a place where we have a huge influence. In fact, there's one interesting story that one of the Texas guys shared with us. The people in Austin-San Antonio corridor around here, they were trying to apply for this government grant, transportation grant, that will require the local taxpayers to pay a bit more tax, but it will allow them to improve the infrastructure by quite a lot. And the government is not allowed to market to the residents, and Walton, being partners of this local government, went forward and marketed on their behalf, and in the end they got a $150 million grant from the central government. Since then, Walton got quite popular locally. Yeah? So there is the cotton meadows. If you look at the surrounding, it's really pretty much filled up, and the best news is you are coming in at, this acre price translates to 75 cents per square foot. 75 cents per square foot. How hard is it to lose money if you're coming in that low? This is a 4 to 6 years holding period. This is just one of the case study. We do have other projects in other areas with different time frame as well. Now to sum it up, I think I've taken quite long. I just want to again summarize what are the advantages of land ownership. Like I said in the beginning, we are not here to take over all of your traditional investment instruments. We are here to pose to you an alternative investment for possible diversification. But the best thing about this particular diversification is that it has low correlation to the market. Meaning for once, whether it's bad news or good news that are coming out from markets all over the world, you don't really have to worry because the correlation is really quite minimum. Next is, of course, volatility. Land investment is the most boring investment on earth. Why? Because nobody buys and sells land on daily basis. So the price tends to get very, very stable. It may not be very exciting. You know, Fal, can you give me a daily update on land investment? No. In fact, every year you probably only have 1 to 2 major updates. But at least you have the peace of mind that this instrument is going to be one of the most predictable one in your portfolio. Last but not least, hard asset. Hard asset after the whole financial downturn is really the way to go, something that doesn't go down in value overnight. Now, I've told you the good things. I have to share with you the bad things, right, to make it fair. What are the risks of pre-development land investment? Time. Timeline is still something we can't control. Like I mentioned in the beginning, are there projects that exited late? Yes. Are there projects that exited early? Yes. It depends a lot on market conditions and its readiness to absorb. Most importantly, its readiness to give our investors good returns. Okay? And last but not least, currency exchange rate is another factor that you may want to take into account because we are investing into the US market. So USD currently is around 1.24 or 1.25. That's something that you may want to consider. There are varying opinions. And if you want to ask me, do I think US will go up or go down 4 to 6 years later? I can tell you, nobody can predict 100%. But at least if you look at the spectrum, the track record, the last many years, personally, I am a lot more comfortable coming in at 1.25 than 1.7 or 1.6. Okay? Now, currency exchange rate is another factor, and of course, you have, again, to take into account whether the returns that we make is enough to cover that risk. Now, at the end of the day, I always end with this slide. We are in the business of land. It is what we do best. You may see a lot of different companies trying to do what we do, but if you look at the track records, I invite you, before deciding on any alternative investments, look at the track records and do your due diligence. And you will see that no track records even come close to what we have the past 30 years. Okay? Now with this, I will end my presentation, and I thank you for your attention. I do invite questions from the floor. I can take a few questions. We still have a little bit more time. So if you have any questions, you can go up to the microphones at the side, and I'll be very happy to answer any queries that you have. Yes, so you can use the microphone at the side. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes.
Can I ask what are the tax implications in the U.S. capital gains and income tax that we pay in Walton, Canada?
Okay, the question is, what are the tax implications in the US? Now, for your information, our investment is not taxable in Singapore. It is subjected to capital gains tax in the US. The tax structure is a little bit different because we have positioned our investment in such a way where you will be exposed to minimum amount of tax. It varies state to state. For Texas, the first $35,000 of profit in 1 year is 0%. The next $35,000 then is exposed to a higher level, maybe 5, 10%. The highest bracket is 15%. And in some other states, like let's say Phoenix, Arizona, it varies from 5 to 15%. In other states, generally it's between 5 to 7 to 15%. But most of the states, the top bracket is 15% of capital gains tax. Does that answer your question, sir? Sorry?
Is there any income generated during the process?
Any income generated during the process? The answer is not really. We do collect rental income while we wait, but the rental income is mostly used to maintain the property. For your information, Walton Investment doesn't come with any more cash calls. We don't collect any management fee, annual fee, and whatever. But whatever rent we collect is very, very minimum per unit that we pay $10,000 to buy 1 unit. The rental income, I just got it from the US government, the tax filing. My rental income per unit last year was $13.13. So it's quite negligible, but yeah. So the main bulk of the income is really at the end when we sell it to either the developer or the financial institutions. Yep. Any more questions from the audience? Yes.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Yeah. Okay, number 1, because Walton is in the business, you won't do for free. So, okay, what are the charges, the quantum that you will collect from our investors? Okay. And the second question, touch wood, if something happens to the land before the stage of the sales to developer, let's say earthquake, whatever, then who bear the loss?
Okay, so I'll just clarify again and I'll repeat the question. Number 1 is, Walton shouldn't be doing things for free. So what are the charges? Am I right? Yes. Second question, what if something happens while we are waiting? What if there's an earthquake? What will happen to my land? Very valid questions. I thank you for that. Number 1 questions, is Walton doing it for free? No. Are there charges on top of the investment amount that you see? No. So where does Walton make the money? You see, we buy things in bulk at the beginning, and when we sell to you, is there any profit made? Of course. Now, Walton stay vested. When we sell to our clients, we still hold 5%. We also want to make the money together with you. But of course, in those markup, we already factor in how much the developers are willing to pay. If let's say it doesn't allow you to make that 10 to 20% per annum returns, that means the land is not cheap enough, we will go look for other land. But when we sell to you, we already made the money that we want to make. Does that answer your question, sir? Okay, that's question 1. Number 2, what if something happens in the while we are waiting for the final returns? What if there's an earthquake? Number 1 answer, the pillar 1 already ensures we do not go to the major earthquake zone. So that is already sieved out in the beginning, mitigating your risk, making sure the land is not exposed to all this. But the other interesting fact that I've heard from the last few years in Walton, in Singapore, any news, let's say Texas has hailstone, my clients will call me, Val, Texas has hailstone. How is it affecting my land? Other news, somebody called me, Val, California has a bushfire. How's my land doing? In Singapore, we don't have all this. So it sounds like really, really bad news, right? Having fire and all this. We asked one of our guys in Atlanta. Atlanta, normally, the land before development is hugely forested. So mostly, they're just all trees. We asked them, what happens if all these trees catch fire? He said, well, it saves us the effort of clearing the land before development. And I asked my Texas guy, hey, what happens when there's hailstone? He was, what's wrong with hailstone? Hailstone comes, you fix a few broken roofs, and life goes on. Maybe it will create a few dents on your car if you don't put it in the garage. But that's about it. And land is land. A lot of all these disasters are not really that relevant. Even when my friend was asking, what if a typhoon passed by the land? Guess what? Your land is still land. Yeah, but in the first place, we already sieve out, we already mitigate the possibility of all these natural disasters happening based on the early selection criteria. Does that answer your two questions, sir? What if the earthquake is unexpected? So we are talking about a scenario where, let's say, they say 2012 is the end of the world. And suddenly, even though all the scientific discovery should be highlighting all the possible earthquake zones, this one is unexpected. A meteor comes. By then, we probably wouldn't worry so much about our investments, won't we? We'll probably worry more about survival. But of course, your concern is very valid. I think the main thing is that earthquake is not really something that comes out of nowhere. There are certain geographical considerations that make the land prone to earthquake. But having said that, if you look at coastal California, that's one of the worst earthquake zones, am I right? But it is one of the biggest economy in the US. You look at Japan, one of the worst earthquake zone, am I right? But for a long, long time, they were doing very, very well. So these are just some of the answers to get you thinking. But of course, like I said, the possibility is really very, very, very small. If you look at the way we buy land, for example, Houston is a very attractive market. There's a lot of growth, there's a lot of activity, but we stayed away. Why? Because there's that tiny bit of possibility that it is affected by the typhoon. It's very near to the coast. And true enough, a few years ago, it did affect the city. It was down for quite a long time. My friends there were saying, yeah, it did affect us. The economy was down for like a few weeks, but after that, life goes back to normal. But the best thing is, if you are a property owner, real estate owner, if an unexpected earthquake really did happen, it's much better to have bare land than to have houses. Am I right? Because shake a bit lah, after that, back to normal. Any more questions? Yes. Okay. The question is on estate planning. What if, touch wood, something happens to the investors? How the legal process is going to be? The good news is in the US, we have created an investment structure that is trust-based. So we already create the trust for you when you first invest, and you're allowed to declare up to 4 beneficiaries for your investment. Meaning, anything happens, touch wood, to the landowner, it is transferred to the beneficiary at the total cost of $100 per project. Doesn't require any other things. The good thing about having this trust structure is exactly that. It makes it very easy to the investors. The transfer is quite hassle-free and it costs very little money. Unlike if we don't have that, then all the estate planning, all the legal fees will kick into effect. But for us, it's quite straightforward. Anything happens to main investors, it will go to the beneficiary, up to 4, minimum 1. Minimum 18 years of age. Cost $100. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
For us to invest in the US, Canada, is it? What are the necessary forms that you need to declare to the US government?
Okay. We do not invest through the Canada office when the property is in US. Walton has offices in every single place where we own land. And the land registration is a centralized one with the US government. Of course, every state has their own database, but it is registered direct to the government. It doesn't have to go through Canada. Yeah. So each individual state, if you invest in Washington, that's where your land will be registered. If you invest in Texas, that's where your land is registered. Any mistake in the registration, title insurance kicks in, you get your full refund. Yep. Maybe I'll take one last question. Yes. Okay. The returns that I showed, is it before or after? The answer is it's before tax. The reason why we put the before tax figure is because every state, every place has different tax structure. So it's very challenging if every single audit we have to factor in the tax structure. Plus, if a client makes $35,000, it is exposed to the lowest bracket of tax. If they make $100,000, they're exposed to the highest level. So it's impossible to really audit one by one, but you can just keep in your mind, those figures are before tax, and the tax in most places in the US, it ranges from 0 to 15% capital gains. Yeah.
So someone who buys multiple units would most likely have to pay tax.
There are ways to doing it. My personal approach, if you don't mind me sharing with you, is to park a few eggs in every area and to stagger it such that I'm always mostly exposed to the lowest level of tax. It's even better if you have a family. So these are tricks that you can ask the manager, portfolio manager to teach you to minimize your tax exposure, especially if you are a family, your husband, wife, or maybe even mother, father, brother, sister. You can spread so that you always get the lowest bracket of tax. Yep. Estate duty, in terms of, let's say someone passed away, not applicable. Like I said, the total cost is really that $100, and then it will be passed down to the beneficiary, who will then be a new landowner. The new owner will then declare a new set of beneficiary. So every single transfer of ownership will then declare a new set of trust and beneficiary. Yeah. If that is all, I'll be around here. If you still have questions, feel free to ask me personally. Outside, there's also a counter, a Walton booth. They have free gifts there. Do go down and probably if you can collect a brochure there, just drop your name and you'll be entitled to a free gift. And any questions that you may have, like I said, you can direct to me or even email me at felicia@walton.com. Wow, I'll get a lot of emails. Yeah. So I'll thank you again for your attention tonight. Great questions from the audience. I hope this talk has introduced you some information on how Walton can fit into your portfolio. Okay, I wish you a good night and a pleasant week ahead. Thank you.